Welcome to Don't You Two Read, a podcast where two sisters talk about all things books.
We're just two girls who found ourselves texting about books on a daily basis and thought, why not turn on a mic?
We'll be talking about our recent reads, a weekly bookish topic, and what we're looking forward to reading next.
So grab a cup of coffee and maybe even a snack and be prepared to take down your TBR and add a lot to it as we talk all things books.
I'm Hilary, a mom in Oklahoma, and I am so excited to recap our year.
And I'm Hannah, a stay-at-home mom in Texas, and I am so happy that we are in 2025.
This is episode 28, and we are so glad that you're here. So today, we're just keeping it simple, but maybe long. We are going to talk about our best books of the year. But first, Hannah, how are you?
Good. I had a horrible book funk in December, but I feel like I'm officially out of it. So I'm enjoying reading, and it's probably honestly just the chaos of the holiday and traveling and sickness. It was chaos. So I think that's probably where it came from. But yeah, I'm enjoying reading again, which is good.
Yeah, I am too. And I mean, so far, so good. I've been having a good time. I think, like I think I said this in one of our last episodes, like, I just want to try to do better at just reading, like, truly what I want. And, like, if I know what I like, just reading it. So I probably will be reading a lot more fantasy this year, or at least for now. There's a lot of fantasy books that I want to read. So that's kind
Hmm.
of what I'm leaning to. It's just, like I think I've been trying to be diverse in my reading, and right now I'm like, no, I'm just going to read what I feel like right now. And so that has helped a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I am very anti reading diverse for myself.
It can make you unhappy if that's not what you're feeling like, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about this list that we have. We're going to do our top 10 books of the year. Was this like an easy process for you or difficult or what?
I feel like it was actually easier than I expected. I had a lot of books that I loved. However, the standard, and I guess that's part of this is a good time to just say it. So I was looking at books that not only I remember loving, but books that I remember that I'm like, okay, I can pinpoint exactly why I loved it, like the characters or whatever. Like I have the reasons in my mind. It's not like, oh, I loved it and I forgot everything. I know some people function like that. I typically don't. Typically, I think because I talk about books and like as I'm reading them, I write detailed reviews. I don't typically forget a whole lot of details, but some of them blend in. And there were a lot that I read that I would say were 5 stars, but that they did blend in. And so it was actually easier than I expected. These 10 that I brought, they're probably not a surprise to most people because I talked about them over and over and over throughout the whole year.
Hmm. So when you made your list, did you what did you do? Did you go through like Storygraph or something to see like what you rated 5 stars, or how did you, or were they just the books, the top 10 that you remembered?
No, so first what I did was I wrote down the books that like came to my mind that I loved. And so I did that, and I think I had like 15 on the list, 14, I don't know, somewhere around there. And then I went to Goodreads and I like scrolled through every book, like all the 5 stars, and then really kind of just like looked at which ones resonated as being top. And they were from my list anyway. So they were the ones that I had already kind of thought would be. And yeah, what about you?
I actually have like a running note in my phone. I've done that for like at least a couple years where I like anytime I finish a book and I have that feeling like, oh, I loved this book, like I will just go and add it to the list. There, like you said, there were more than 10, but as the year goes on, sometimes you find one you like better and then you realize
Hmm.
something that you put in there, you're like, oh, I did really like I still loved it at the time, but I can see it's not in the same category as these other books. It doesn't mean I don't love it. It's just
Hmm.
not on the list. I don't know. That sounds like I like they're bad. That's not true. I had still other 5-star books besides these.
Yeah, me too. Okay, but here's my question. So we did a favorite so far episode, which was episode 9. And
Oh, wow, a long time
do
ago.
you, I have it here, but do you remember which ones you picked and if they are still on your list now for the end of the
Um,
year?
I think a lot of them, yes. I need to double
Well,
check.
maybe we'll do this at the end. That way we can just talk about whatever and then
Recap
at
it.
the end. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about some stats first. Like I'm just gonna read some random things that about my year and you can share some stuff if you want. But something I thought was interesting is okay, so the average time it took me to finish a book is 5 days. That's, I mean, some are longer, some are shorter. I didn't perfectly log them, but that's what Storygraph says. And then, so I don't know how accurate that is, but the moods, I think this was accurate for me very much. Like, there's very clearly three top categories for me in the books that I like to read, and that's adventurous, mysterious, and emotional, which is, I think that's very accurate for me. Um, I think I want to try to pay attention to those moods better in the year because, like, I want to say a lot, not all, but a lot of the books I loved had those moods in them. And then I definitely gravitate towards a medium-paced book. And then most of the books I read this year were, I mean, I would say standard. 67% were from 300 to 499 pages. So that's, I feel to me, but I don't know. To me, that's like the standard size of a book,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know if that's not necessarily true. But 13% were over 500 pages. So I would like to that number to be a little bit higher next this year, just because again, the fantasy books I would like to read are almost all larger than that or on the
Mm-hmm.
chunkier side, and I have found myself to avoid them a little bit. So I want to try to do better. But what's funny is that only 3% of my books this year were nonfiction. So three books.
Okay, I
I had
saw
three books that were nonfiction.
mine was 2%.
Yeah, I had three, and
How do you feel about that?
um, those were like the only ones I really wanted to read.
Yeah.
And so there are a couple in this year that I would like to read, but I don't really intend to increase it. If I don't care if it's higher, but I only read nonfiction if I am like, yeah, that one looks really, like applicable to me.
Mm-hmm.
Or, but my average star rating was 4.07, which I'm gonna be honest, I don't know that I feel like that's correct. I I feel like maybe I rated things like looking at my graph, I rated a lot of stuff 4 stars. And so
Mm-hmm.
I look back and I wonder, I feel like maybe I rated some stuff too highly
Mm-hmm.
just because how I feel about my reading this year. So I had a lot of strong books, but they were not the norm, I would say, for the book. I had a lot of meh books this year, so I feel like I didn't rate as harshly as I maybe felt or should have. I don't know why. So that's just something for me to be aware of going in. Like, I think maybe I rated a little generously because I don't feel like I really liked my reading year. Like I feel really strongly about a few, but a lot of them were not great.
Yeah. I could see that. I mean, nothing is really surprising. I will say this. Like, romance is obviously my top genre. My mood map, I was telling Hillary, I thought it was a glitch because the mood map, it was like a graph and mine does not even move from the top. And so it says lighter books push the line up and darker books push the line down. Mine is literally a straight line from January to December. I I have beef with that. I don't know how they determine that because there were a lot of books that I would consider were like fantasy, I would not consider those like
Like the
light.
Romanoffs.
Yeah, or like one of them that I'm going to talk about today. very heavy, like grief related. I don't feel like those are light, so I don't know how Storygraph pulls these. But yes, I will say
Overall.
generally, overall, I do enjoy light, happy feeling toned books, but I did notice that with my favorites, I feel like my favorites did not necessarily meet that criteria. A few of them did. A few of them did. But a lot of them on my favorites for the year, they made me like feel gritty, raw
Hmm.
emotions, and I think it's something that I don't typically like think that I want, but something that I really do enjoy. So that's hard. It's hard to know because I know sometimes like I will talk myself out of reading a book because someone says it's too sad, but then I end up actually really liking it or not thinking it's that sad. So I don't know how to fix that. But yes, most of mine were light and happy, and then it said I read 77 new authors to me, which seems like a
Wow.
lot. So I feel like I
Yeah, you were
tried,
trying you're trying a lot of new stuff.
yeah, I was trying a lot of new stuff. It said I reread 15 books
That's a lot
and
too.
then I DNF'd 30. However, I will say I think I DNF'd a lot more than that because I don't know exactly when I started Storygraph. I mean, I think I probably had it for the whole year. I don't know
That's
when
probably right because we've only done 8.
That's true. Okay, so yeah, 30 DNFs,
That's a
which
lot too. Yeah.
everybody's saying for their New Year goal, they're like, I want to be able to put down a book. And I'm like, I do not have that
You're like,
problem.
I need to
And
keep it.
because of that reason, because I've DNF'd so often, my average rating for the year was 4.01.
Oh, it's close to mine.
So again, the numbers tell you one thing. The full story is that if I had pushed myself to finish all of those 30 books that I DNF'd, the rating would have been lower. So it seems like I loved everything or like had it overall, like Hilary said, like enjoyed most of my reads. But I did quit before we rated for a lot. So that's something to
True.
keep in mind too.
True. I like how Storygraph, I'm looking right now, it says like your months, and I kind of want to look back and see like what happened those months because it told me like March, my average, the highest average rating for that month, it was 4.75. So it's like I was loving a lot of stuff.
Which one was your lowest? Because March was my highest too.
April was my
Oh.
least favorite, which is funny. I guess I had too many good books because in
Yeah.
April was
It
an
threw you in
average
a
of
funk.
3.65. So pretty bad.
Okay, mine was July. It said my average in July was 3.4. So I
Oh,
was,
that's terrible. That's when we started the
yeah.
podcast, I think.
Like, I don't know what was going on, but man, interesting.
Yeah, and it says I explored 37 new authors.
That's still a
And
lot.
yeah, and 65 of the books I read were a part of a series. I hope I can finish some of these series this year. And yeah, I reread 13 books and
Yeah.
DNF 12. So I think that's about right for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about it. Let's start out, I guess. Okay, so what's your book number 10?
Are we going in any particular order or just, are you going in any particular order?
Um, my top 3, I would say, are I think, but like the rest, not necessarily. These are all just like the best of the year.
Yeah. Okay. So I will start just mine. I'll do what Hillary just said, and I'll do my top three purposeful, and the rest are just top 10. Okay. Let's start with Christmas because we just finished Christmas, and I have two on my list that are Christmas. So first, my favorite Christmas, one of them was Saved by Noel by Tracy Baack. I just really enjoyed this book. I read it early in the season, like before technically Christmas season had probably started. And so I felt like it gave me like all the Christmas vibes. It was just very happy, just a nice Christmas festive romance. And I feel like it had all the things I like. And I honestly every book that I was reading after that I couldn't stop comparing them. Not just comparing the book, but like the feeling. Like I felt like I couldn't get that same happy Christmas feeling with any other Christmas book. And I read
Hmm.
a lot of Christmas books. So this is one of them. There's two that were my favorites, but it was just to me a standout for my Christmas books. Through all of them I read, I love this one the most.
Yeah, this was a great, I loved this one too. A really good book. And I think it added because we know Tracy now. I know her, but
Hmm.
it was a really good one. Okay,
Yeah.
so my number 10 is, I know this is going to be on your list. So we're going to have some duplicates for sure. My number 10 is A Crown of Chains by Erin Phillips. I have not talked about this one on the podcast because Hannah basically mentions Erin every episode, it feels like. But I don't, I'm not going to go through the recap of what the story is about, but basically it's sorry. Basically, it's a retelling of the biblical story Esther. It's very loosely based off of that, I would say. And I told Hannah when I read it, I was surprised. I said, I don't feel like you shared how dark and like very, very dark it was. It was almost like, I almost would say it's a tie between Handmaid's Tale and Esther and I don't know. I mean, those are the two things that came to mind. Like Handmaid's Tale meets Esther, which that I think conveys like it's a pretty dark story, dark themes, not a lot of happy feelings. But that reading experience, I read it on a drive to Austin and then in my Bible plan for the year, I purposely waited to read it when I was going to do Esther in my Bible plan. And I got to read Esther after I finished, or around the same time as Crown of Chains. And it was just so, like, it enhanced the reading experience for me, just getting to see the biblical telling, but then also this fiction perspective. It just gave me like a deeper understanding and I've always loved the story, but it definitely, I don't know, it was a great experience. So it's very, very sad and very dark, but I loved it.
Yes, that one is on my list also. I I think about this book often. I feel like I remember reading it and feeling very sad. It was like heavy, but I feel like I enjoyed it so much because there were certain elements of it that spoke to me as a parent. There's like a specific quote in there where a parental figure says, I have failed you and I have had weaknesses, but even in that, there's been mercy through that. And so I mean, I feel like on a parent level, it spoke to me. On a spiritual level, it spoke to me. And then I feel like it also, yeah, like you do see a lot of just the darker side of what Esther probably went through. And it's fiction, but I feel like she um, tied a lot of things that do biblically make sense for that time period. So, anyway, yeah, we already know I'm obsessed with this book, and it is definitely on my top 10.
So that was Hannah's then, if you didn't catch that, number nine.
Yes.
In no particular order, just to be clear. Okay, I'm like, we don't want to offend anybody. Okay, so my number nine is okay. We're gonna do it how we want. Obviously, everyone rates things however they want, but this one it was a 5 star for me. But a lot of this was because of my experience reading it. It was so much fun. This is The Housemaid by Frieda McFadden. I thought this was such a fun thriller. It's everywhere. Everyone has read it. It is just loopy and I don't know, highly, highly entertaining, extremely short chapters. Um, there is like a dark side to it, but it's not too dark. It's not too like twisted or you know what I mean? It's not going to make you feel gross
Mm.
reading it or anything. Um, but my coworkers, two of the girls I worked with, read it at the same time. And so we were all listening to it like within the same week. And it
That's
was
fun.
just, it was so much fun. And then I'd get to work and be like, did you get to where are you at? Where are you at? And what did you hear? And what did, and so I think that took it to the next level. So it was just super fun.
I have not read any of her books, actually.
They're entertaining. They're hit and miss, but a lot of fun.
Okay, let's see. For my number 8, Most Wonderful Crime of the Year. This is the second Christmas book on my list, and I just loved this book. I thought that this was fun. It had the Christmas wintry setting, it had the mystery, it had romance. I liked every element. Sometimes I think Christmas can be like very light, which is fine. But this one, I felt like the romance to me had like the backstory. Each character had like it had enough of like a history between them individually, them together. I loved the mystery elements. It felt very Agatha Christie to me, or like Clue, Knives Out. I felt like it had just enough of the mystery to where it felt like a solid mystery. And then I also felt like it had enough of Christmassy to be like fun for that time of year. And then also the romance. Like I felt like it checked the boxes very well for me on pretty much all the categories. And I don't feel like I had anything at all negative to say about this book, which is why it was a 5 star and why it is on here. I kept thinking about it and I loved it. It was great.
Okay, this book, I'm sorry, am I on 8? Yes. My number 8 is The Woman on the Ledge by Ruth Mancini. This is another thriller. I did talk about this early on, I believe, in the podcast. I loved it. I felt like it was a very smart, clever, I guess thriller, but I would say it's more of a mystery. I think if you like the same vibes as Wrong Place, Wrong Time, obviously we don't have the time travel, but that same type of mystery and thriller, I think you would like this one. I liked it. It wasn't twisted, it wasn't too creepy or anything, just a really good like and the perspective of lawyers and police, and I really liked it. It just hit all the right notes for me.
Yes, you brought that one. I remember you talked about that one.
It's a good one.
Okay, for my number 7, Divine Rivals.
Ooh, I love this book so much.
It was the first book I read in 2024. So, like it has been a full calendar year, is my point. And the fact that I remember I read it and January 1st and I finished it that week and I said, "Oh, I think this is going to be a favorite for the year." But also, I was thinking there's going to be so many other books that I read we'll have to see. And after the whole year was done, that book still was one that I felt was really, really strong. And this was one I had several people tell me, "Oh, I don't think you're gonna like that one."
I feel like I told you to read it.
Yeah, and I remember I had asked you, I said, I'm in a book funk, and that one was ready. There were a few on my list that I said this, and I'm like, it's ready. Should I read it? And Hillary's like, yes. Yeah, sometimes you just need the push to just do it. And I
Mhm.
loved it. And again, this one was not light and fluffy. And
Mm-mm.
I really, really got invested in the story. It's, how would you describe it? Like historical?
Yes, it feels historic. Okay, almost like I was gonna say like Narnia
Yeah.
times. That's fresh on my mind
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
Noel's watching it, but it feels like the times of Narnia. So it feels
Yes.
like World War I, but it's
Hmm.
not. It's not Germany and the Allies. It's
Yeah.
it's the gods. The
Yes.
gods war. So it's like a twist, but it feels
And
historical.
it's short. If I remember correctly, this is not a long book, which
Yeah,
was
like
surprising.
300-ish
Yeah,
pages
it's
maybe.
it's short to me, and I feel like the fact that she made it, Rebecca Ross made it so deep and meaningful, and I don't know, she just
So
did a really
beautiful.
good job in a really short time, which I think is very difficult to do. So, I loved it.
Yes, that was on one of my favorites last year. I stand by that. It's one of my all-time favorites. I saw someone say it was no good, and I was like, I'm so offended. That's one of the few books that I was like, I will accept no criticism. I love that book so much. Okay. And I did like her the follow-up to it as well. There's only two, and I thought they were I love that now, like the duology stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so my book number 7 is She Really Going Out with Him by Sophie Cousens. I recently talked about this, I believe. It's basically like how to find a man in 10 dates chosen by your children. I laughed at this. I cried. I basically emotional. There you go. Like all hit the right notes for me. It was emotional. If he makes me feel something, I love it. As a parent, as a woman, it was just I don't know. I really like her writing, and so I want to read more from her. But this was a solid, a pleasant surprise.
Okay, number 6 for me is A Bond of Briars by Erin Phillips. So this is another one I have very similar thoughts of A Crown of Chains. It's different. It's different because this one, I always tell people, okay, if you're wanting more of a romance, do A Bond of Briars. If you're, for not a romance, do A Crown of Chains. But again, very, to me, meaningful themes in this one. This is the retelling of Ruth, and I mean, I didn't even think twice about Ruth, if I'm being honest, whenever I have read the Bible. So the fact that she creates this whole book, plot, story, universe, is just fascinating to me. And I feel like when I read Erin Phillips' book, I don't feel like they ever say God or Jesus or any of those words. And I feel like
Uh-uh.
she very much points it to that direction where you just like it resonates in your spirit. I don't know, that might sound weird, but I do feel like she just does such a good job that I feel like you do see the redemption, the grace, and all the stuff of God. And while you're reading this, fantasy book. So I love this one a lot. One of my favorites for sure.
Okay. My number 6 book is The One with the Kiss Cam by Cindy Steele. This book I read in February. I don't know, guys. I don't know what it is about this book. It's one of the only, I think, rom-coms that I have. Yeah. Um, and it just stuck with me. I don't know why. Maybe it was just when I read it, but it was just the cutest book to me. Closed door, but I just felt it. It was all the right notes. Like I felt the chemistry. I loved it. I loved all of it. Just like all of it. So I know this is one hand and I have slightly different opinions on, but I don't know. I guess it just hit me at the right time, but I loved it.
And that one was on your um like favorite so far. I remember
Oh,
that.
yeah, like it just stuck with me the whole year. I knew like the that one went on my note right away, like in February. Like, yep, I love this one.
Yeah, that was an early one. That's honestly how I can tell when a book was like it was one of the
Almost a
early
year
ones.
ago.
Yeah, because honestly, I was thinking that I was like, I wonder if some of these are my favorite because they have been more recent. But I think no, like half of mine were from the beginning. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 5 for me is Till I Reach You by Larissa Padilla. This one was a book that, do I think it was like absolutely perfect? No. However, this book has like grief. So literally it has two romances basically because you have her falling in love with Hayden, who was like her first love basically, and then you have this is not a spoiler, he dies. And like the whole point of the book is she is finding love after loss. So you have both romances and it's like a dual timeline type of situation, but I don't know. I really, really love this book. For some reason, I don't know how like the writing style or what. I felt so many feelings. And this is one book. I don't cry with books. I cry with visual stuff, but not really with books. This book made me cry several times. I felt very like the sadness. And that's the thing too. I know like I say that and some people may be like, "Well, I don't want to read it. I don't want to be sad." It ends happy. We get there, but like you are through the ringer and that's what made it, I think, on my top 10. I felt so many feelings and it was just really good.
Okay. My number 5 is Ready or Not by Cara Bastone. I love this book. Loved it. And you know what's crazy is that I listened to this one on audio, which if I
Mm,
loved it on audio, I wonder how much more I would have loved it too, just reading it.
yeah.
Like, but I thought it was a really good audio. I thought it was really good. I loved it. This is a book where the girl is pregnant and she's trying to navigate that, and she's not in a relationship with this guy anymore. So she's trying to navigate it by herself. It was like the sweetest, one of the most wholesome books I've read. It was just all the emotional. Again, here we go. Just very emotional. I felt happy. I felt sad. I felt frustrated for her. I felt happy for her. Just all the things. I felt all the things. And then there was a scene where I don't know why that. I guess because it reminds me of when I was dating my husband. Like there's a scene when they're sitting there and she and the main male character, they're like sitting there and then they touch their hands or something. I think like their hands touch, like they held hands for the first time. And I was like, I just don't know. I love it. Like it still stands out to me of them like holding hands for the first time. It just because
Yeah.
I remember holding hands with my husband for the first time and it was still like at a performance too. So I don't know. It was very sweet. It stuck with me. And
Yeah, that was a good
she has a
one.
new book coming out
I have that.
this year. You have it?
Yeah, I haven't
Oh,
read it,
I
but
can't wait to
yes,
hear if it's good.
I
Yeah.
know. I'm both excited and scared.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 4 for me. This is like a loophole, guys, but I don't care. I'm like, I make the rules right now. So, Spark of the Everflame, I'm including all 3 that have been out so far. Spark of the Everflame, Glow of the Everflame, and Heat of the Everflame. I feel like we don't have the fourth one yet, but the first 3 I think were solid, really good fantasy. And these were indie. They are now being published, but I mean, very, very impressed that they were indie, that they were just to me very well done. The world building, the just everything, the relationships, the romance, very slow burn, very like a lot of dynamics there at play. And I think she did a really good job so far. I am anxiously awaiting book 4. But yeah, so those for me, The Kindred's Curse is up there for sure.
Okay, my number 4 is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. Obviously, Queen Abby, my favorite author, I would say. I just think she gets better and better. And hopefully, I don't eat those words because I'm so excited for her next book coming out. Like, I truly think, like, her books just keep getting better with time. Like, I don't know. She's so good. And I feel like she's not closed door, okay? I would say she's open door, but I would say she's almost transitioning to like, I feel like almost like contemporary fiction instead of rom-com. And so we're seeing less of the physical and more of the like internal and I don't know, like, but I love it. I love the direction she's going. It was such a good book. Uh, I think you should read her other ones first, but you don't have to if you don't want to. But they're all so good. Besides,
Yeah.
Part of Your World is not my favorite, but I almost feel like you should, if you read that one first, it would help you in this one too.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with
So
that.
and maybe enjoy, appreciate it a little bit.
Okay. So now we're in the top 3. I'm so excited. Okay, my number 3 is Betrothal or Breakaway by Leah Brunner. This is one that so out of all of the rom-coms I read, this one to me I still think about. It's to me a standout. And Leah, this is not the first time that I would consider Leah to be on my favorite list. She was on my favorites for my rereads of the year. This hockey series, Hillary, you haven't read it yet, have you?
No.
It's so good. I just feel like it's not just like rom-com. Like I would dare I say, like she writes similar to like Abby, where it's like you have like drama kind of. I don't know if that's the right word, but like you
With
have
romance. Yeah.
yeah, like it's not just like a romance. And y'all know I don't love overly silly, so like I don't think Leah goes there as far as like being a funny rom-com. I would consider hers more contemporary romance. Anyway, this one was just good. She had a neurodivergent character. It's single mom, marriage of convenience, and it's like a very, very slow burn, which is my love language. I love it.
Hmm.
So yeah, I just thought this was really, really good. And it's closed door, but I really feel like this one could be enjoyed by people who read all types because her books for me would appeal, I think, to both because she does write. Um, she writes a lot of tension, a lot of chemistry in her books. So I love it.
Okay. So my number three book. Okay, I didn't mention this before because I didn't want to mess up my order. Okay, so my number three. So I picked one, but assuming like they all go together, I picked Glow of the Everflame by
Mm.
Penn Cole. I I had to. So first I had Spark of the Everflame, and then I was like, well, I like Glow better, I think. But Heat was I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. Like, I think I rated Spark of the Everflame 4.5 because I was like, well, I loved it, but there was like a little something missing, but then Glow gave it to me, and then Heat just continued another 5 star. So to me, looking back, I think they all should be 5 stars because it's like one big story and
Mm-hmm.
you have them all together. I'm like, it's solid. Like it was just solid after solid after solid.
Yeah.
Like I was telling Hannah and I were talking about this recently. It's just, I don't know, like it's impressive. She just hit solidly each one. And it's like the slowest burn you'll ever find in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's like one of like when you TV series that you would watch growing up, that there's like a main couple that you want to get together and it's just like not working out for them, but you want them to work out together. It just felt like that. Like like a 90s TV show that they have the couple you're rooting for, but they just never like they're just crossing paths. So it felt like that
Yeah.
just
Never the right time.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it was just so good. So good. I put Glow just to pick one, but all of them, the whole thing, like Hannah. So we're
Yeah.
cheaters.
Yeah, I was like, I can't count this as three of my count.
I know. I considered it. I did, but it felt kind of weird to do that. So
Yeah. Okay, number two. Draco Malfoy and the Mortifying Ordeal of Being in Love by Is This Self-Care? This is fanfic. This is not a book. Again, breaking the rules, because we make the rules. So this, I read this in April, and yeah, it's a fanfic. I brought this to, I feel like I've talked about this several times on the podcast. It was definitely in my favorite so far when we did it at the halfway point of the year. And I mean, this one and my number one, they were very like interchangeable for first place to me because I just felt like this book, it was everything I never would have thought I would have wanted or needed out of Harry Potter fanfic. Like, I was always a judgmental person with fanfic, specifically with Harry Potter, because I am a purist and I'm like, no, how dare you? Like, J.K. Rowling did everything with the exception, which is where this fanfic comes in, with the exception of Draco, I feel like she did everything flawlessly, like made a whole universe, not just like the book, like she created an entire universe that made sense every step of the way. Like there were not plot holes, there were not issues. Like I feel like she did everything flawlessly. But yes, I always struggled with Draco's ending. And so this gave me like the redemption arc that I felt like he deserved. And so this fanfic just made me very happy. It gave me all the good vibes. It's Draco and Hermione, like, feel what you will about that matchup, but I loved it. It was very slow. Like this book, I would consider slow, slow, slow paced. I could see why people would say this book was boring or like not much happened in the book because it's slow, but I feel like you're in that magical world. Feels very much like the same world that JK wrote. So it gave me all the Harry Potter feelings, which I love, but it gave me something new, which I also loved. So yeah, I just was obsessed. Obsessed. I know it's not a book, but it's up there. It's like my favorite work of art.
okay, on that note, my number two is Manacled.
I told
That's
you, I
funny.
knew it.
That's funny because I was like, no, they're not the same.
I told her, I said, I think our top two are going to be the same.
Yeah, similar vibes. So, Manacled by Sen Lin Yu. I looked it up just while Hannah was talking. This is huge, huge. Um, Storygraph said my longest book of the year was Heat of the Everflame at over 1,000 pages. However, I do think Manacled is bigger because it says like on print, it just depends. It's anywhere from 925 to 1,200 pages. It's a lot. Someone says on here they counted the words. It's over 370,000 words. So I think it's over 1,000 pages.
Wow.
It's huge. It took me 2 weeks to read it. It was so good. Like Hannah said, I'm so impressed. I get, because I saw someone say you shouldn't rate them because someone else came up with these characters. So I can see that. I can see that thought. However, I'm just saying I loved it. So creative, loosely took the story, like Hannah said, loosely and made it all her own. This one's, I mean, kind of the opposite. This one's tragic. It's extremely sad, extremely dark, a lot of triggers, um, but very emotional. Like, again, there it is. Like, made me feel a lot of things. I After reading it, it was crazy that at first, like, I was like you. Well, I was thinking, I don't see, like, what's this thing with Draco and Hermione? Like, that's so weird to me. But after reading it, I was like, okay, I get it. Like, this is actually what happened instead of the
Mm-hmm.
ending of Harry Potter. This is how it's supposed to be. Like, how did they
Yeah.
not end up together now, looking back? So in my mind, this is canon.
Yeah.
Draco and Hermione are together. So and apparently this book, I don't know if you can find it anywhere. I'm sure it's somewhere on the internet, but I heard they're taking it off because the author is writing, like she got a contract, and so she's writing a
Mm-hmm.
traditionally published story, but has to take out all the Harry Potter information. So I'm very curious. I'm nervous. I'm scared to see how that turns out, but I had to mention this one.
Okay, but see, that is very similar of what's happening with the one I mentioned.
Yes.
However, hers is still going to stay on, what is it, like AO3, I think is what it's
hmm
called. Hers is still going to stay, but her name is Bridget Knightley.
I saw that, and it's on NetGalley.
Yes. Yes.
But the synopsis, it didn't sound like Harry Potter at all. So I'm curious about that one too. Like, because I know you'll
I,
read it. I'm curious to see what you
yes.
think about the comparison.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think and who am I to say? I haven't read it. I just automatically feel like it's not gonna have the same magic for me.
hmm
I'm excited to read it and I'm sure it'll be good because I really enjoyed her writing style in the fanfic, but I think all the stars just aligned for me on that one. So,
And I feel like maybe I would like it. I wonder if I would like it better, mine, because it's so sad that maybe I won't feel like as emotionally like, oh, all
damaged.
this terrible stuff is happening to Hermione. It'll be
Mm-hmm.
someone else. I don't know. I'm curious,
Yeah,
but I had to mention it, and it does make me sad. I have to say that I will never own like the physical copy of this book because it doesn't exist. It makes me sad,
I
but
know. I thought that too about this one. I was like, that's upsetting.
yeah, and I'm like, we did it to ourselves.
Okay. Number one, which again, I think we're gonna have the same one. So I'll just kick us off. Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli.
For sure. I mean, obviously, y'all know that's my number one book.
Yeah, it is my favorite. It was something that when I was looking like at my top 15, top 10, top 5, like that one was the one that I kept saying that one. I kept moving that one up 100%. That's in the top 5. And then I'm like 100% top 3, 100%. Like it was no question for me.
I was kind of surprised that's your number one, though.
Okay, listen. Hilary has never seen The Vampire Diaries. This book had many feelings that The Vampire Diaries has. And I bring this up. There's several books that I have brought up that I'm like, oh, this very much felt like The Vampire Diaries. And I love that. So, this book, Heartless Hunter, it did. It very much had Vampire Diaries feelings. And then it has like the witchy feelings, it had the enemies, it had the love triangle, which I was obsessed with. I know some people did not love like the love triangle situation. I did not see that coming, and that was probably one of my favorite parts. I did not expect the romance to be so prominent in this book, and I loved it.
Yeah, obviously I could talk about the same scenes over and over. This is a book I read it in May, I believe, which is a little bit after it came out. And I didn't know much about it. I just knew it was like a witch and a witch hunter. That's it. And I read it and I'm like, oh wow, I loved it. And I remember the scenes. Like I remember several of the scenes very distinctly. And sometimes it's hard for me to picture like landscapes and houses and stuff like that. But like, I don't know. I think she did such a good job at describing the setting and the characters that I can still, like, in my mind, picture all these different scenarios that happened. And it's crazy because the second book comes out in February, so soon. And I don't feel like I need to reread Heartless Hunter in order to go into it. Like I I might just because I want to, but I don't feel like I have to. I remember how I felt when this book ended and you know what I mean? Like I am ready to go. And a lot of books I get so like there's so much going on that I'm like, I don't really know how this ended anymore or
Yeah.
how what we even are going into. And this one, I'm like, nope, I know how it ended. I know the last scene. Like I can picture it in my mind. I'm ready. And again, emotional. A lot of like happy, sad, all the feelings.
That book I also remember, and I won't say where. I'll tell you, I'll cut it out. But I did cry for this book too. But see, that's the thing. It takes a magic element for a writer to do that to me because I don't know if I just have like an automatic separation of like myself and the book that I maybe don't feel enough sadness to get there. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but very, very few. These are the two that stand out to me this year. The one that I mentioned earlier, and then this one that I felt enough emotion that it made me that upset when something happened in the book. And that says a lot. I finished Heartless Hunter, I think it was like in 24 hours. I could not stop reading it.
That is one book I was like, no, you need to read it. You have to read this book right now. Like, stop what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing and read it. So, yeah, that's our top 10. I want to say something to note that I find interesting that besides Just for the Summer for me, which is Abby Jimenez, um, I was not like anticipating or looking forward to any of these books. You know what I mean? Like they
Mm-hmm.
were not, if I did not have like a most anticipated list or anything at the time, but if I had one, no, I don't think besides Abby, none of these would have been on there. These were all just like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like I thought they sounded interesting for whatever reason, and then I gave them a try and I loved them. But they were not like the books I was most looking forward to. A lot of those, which were on last time, are disappointing episodes.
Yeah, you should always just give things a try. And also I said this in earlier that I don't love going outside of my comfort zone. Like I'm not gonna go force myself to read a nonfiction is really my point. But all these, most of them, there's a few that are my comfort zone for sure. Like I had the contemporary romance, I had the Christmas, those, easy. Like those are like my happy place. The rest of them though, fantasy obviously is like somewhere that I thrived, that I really, really loved more than other things. And also just trying things like the fanfic. Who would have ever thought? And then it's like my favorite thing. So you never know. You never know what you're gonna like.
Yeah, and Kindle Unlimited, like Manacled was free. And then a couple of these are from the library. A couple are from Kindle Unlimited, several. And one I bought. Oh no, two I bought. So Heartless Hunter ended up being on Kindle Unlimited. Literally, I bought the book from Pango and then like I think the day I got it, they added it to Kindle Unlimited. So I think I read it in both like my Kindle and the book. But Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez, I think that's it. The rest were like a NetGalley, Kindle Unlimited, or library. So it's interesting. It's interesting that how that works out. Like the stuff that you think you are going to love is not always what's going to stick with you the most. So I think we've been talking about that maybe,
I was gonna say this, the expectations.
yeah, that plays a big role in or books that surprise you. Like maybe
Yes.
that's something like something that you're like, I didn't expect to like this that much. Like maybe that's what sticks with you more.
And like at my list, again, you had a few that they were like very happy feeling books, but most of mine were emotional. I would say they go into the sad territory. They're heavy. You feel, like heavy feelings. And so it's funny because that's not typically what I grab, and that's not typically what I would say that I enjoy. And those made some of the top books of the year. So,
Yeah, just try things. Maybe you just like more emotional books instead of sad.
yeah.
Like maybe they're not the same. Like there can be books that are sad, like A Song to Drown Rivers. That's the one I talked about, I think, with
Or
Josh.
like Kristen Hannah. Like, I don't
Yes,
want
yes,
that.
Kristen Hannah. Yes, that just like everything bad's happening ever in the world. But I'm okay if sad things happen, but there's also like a message of hope.
Yeah.
I think like Manacled was one of the saddest books I read all year,
And
but at
that's
the
why I
end,
never read it because I was like, I don't want to be
it is
depressed.
very sad. But the end message is like perseverance and hope, and almost to the extent that you would say like a story of World War II would be like of someone who survived, you know what I mean, the Holocaust. They'd be like, wow, it's really sad. But the overall message is one of hope and determination and that
Yeah.
kind of where you're at the end, you're like, wow, what a strong spirit. Like it's admirable.
Yeah.
So but I don't know that Manacles that it is truly depressing. And looking back, I don't know if I could bring myself to read it again.
Especially because it's so long. Like, and I was telling Josh this too, because Josh loves what I personally consider sad, heavy movies or movies about war. And to me, they're very sad. Like, they make me feel sad. And I told Josh, like, I like sad movies because I think in my brain, I can be sad for 2 hours and then it's done. But with a book, I am typically reading that like a story graph would say for 5 days.
Hmm.
And that's a long period of time for me personally to feel heavy and to feel that sadness of whatever that story is. So, like, I personally prefer feeling sad with movies and with books. I am more hesitant because, in general, I tend to like to read books that can maybe lift my mental load rather than me feel like heavy. I'm like, I already feel heavy with my life most of the time that I don't really want books to add to that. So I don't know. It's a balance, and I haven't fully figured out where my happy place is with books. But seeing my favorites, I do think it makes me more willing to try books that people say,
Made
yeah,
me
if they're
cry.
emotional or if they're like, oh, it was beautiful. I'm normally like, no, I don't want it. So maybe I'm more like, I need to be more open-minded to just try something new.
Yeah, I think like this year I want to try to read more of Rebecca Ross because I loved her
Mhm.
writing. I wouldn't say necessarily that she's a fast-paced author. And that is what I would say I love. You know, I'd be like I love fast pace. But I don't think I wouldn't call her books necessarily fast-paced, but they are beautiful. And you're right. I would tend to be like, beautiful means boring, you know? And
Mhm.
then but reading her book, like she is such a good writer, it makes me want to be like, okay, maybe I need to revisit, like look at her backlist, look into it, try it and see
Mhm.
like is maybe I've been selling myself short or I don't know, even like contemporary fiction. Maybe I need to look at that more. And for thrillers, I mean, other than The Housemaid, which is a lot of that was because of my experience with my coworkers, like maybe like a lot of thrillers aren't just doing it for me anymore. Maybe I need to stay away from, like the popular thrillers now. They're just so icky and dark and dumb
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
of times, I think. So maybe I need to look more at like research better and maybe stick to mysterious books instead of the like, you'll never
Yeah.
guess this coming, that type of book.
Yeah.
because those did not hit for me. There's not one book like that other than The Housemaid. But I mean, other than that, there was none, nowhere. They were nowhere close to this list. So anyway, that's it, I guess.
Like, comment, share. You can even comment your favorites, some of yours. Like, are any of ours on your favorite list? Or I'm also think it's funny because do you ever see people's favorites and you're like, wow, that one, I did not like that at all.
Yeah.
So I do like seeing people's favorites, though. You get like a good grasp of kind of their reading interests. Next week we'll be at Twilight, I think. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Ow!
I know, like buckle in. I know a lot of people said, "Oh, I don't know if I want to read Breaking Dawn." I've had several people message me. They're like, "I don't know." So if you don't want to read Breaking Dawn,
Don't read it.
don't read it. Told everybody who has told me this. I'm like, don't even read it. Like, don't force yourself to read it. Just listen to the episode. Like, I feel like we go through it well enough that you don't have to. Like, we did the
Yeah.
work, so you don't have to.
Yeah, we traumatized ourselves for you.
Yeah, and I think you'll still enjoy it whether you've read it or not.
Yeah,
So,
who cares?
anyway, that's it. Bye.
Bye. Hang on. Don't turn off. Don't turn it off. I mean, you can turn off the recording, just not that.
Mm.
If you've made it this far and didn't add this episode to your DNF pile, thanks a bunch.
That brings us to the end of this week's episode for the Don't You Two Read podcast. We hope you enjoyed hearing about our recently read books and hopefully getting to know us better as we begin this podcast journey with you guys.
We will be including timestamps in the description on every episode so you can check there for books or products that we mentioned in today's episode.
Be sure to tune in to our next episode when we will be chatting about all things books. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Don't You Two Read Podcast, and you can find me at Hannah Reads.
And I'm at Hilary Reads. If you enjoyed today's episode, would you take a moment to follow us? You can also rate and review us wherever you listen. And as always, please share this with all of your bookish friends.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Until next time, we hope you have a magical week filled with 5-star reads.